Hello, my name is Ruth, and I'm going to talk about the Federalist Papers, or the Federalist. Why? Because I want to. Okay, no, really, because I like them. I think they're interesting. The Federalist is a collection of essays written in the late 1700s to convince the U.S. voter to ratify the then new U.S. Constitution. Why new? Well, because the old one kind of stunk. It is definitely a hard read. It was written so long ago that we use words differently today than we did back then. For example, I don't know anybody who uses the term solicitude. But it's worth it. What I find interesting about the Federalist is that it was written at a time, kind of like now, when the United States was going through a rather difficult period. Yeah, we had won the war for independence, astonishingly, against the superpower of the time, Great Britain, but things had kind of fallen apart. I'll get to more of that later, but for now, here's the opener, Federalist 1, published in October of 1788.
After an unequivocal experience of the inefficacy of the subsisting federal government, you are called upon to deliberate on a new Constitution for the United States of America. The subject speaks its own importance, comprehending in its consequences nothing less than the existence of the Union, the safety and welfare of the parts of which it is composed, the fate of an empire in many respects the most interesting in the world. Inefficacy of the subsisting federal government. Wow, you mean they had a crappy federal government back then too? The writers of the Federalist, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison, or they went by Publius when they published this thing. They knew there was a way out. They knew that they had in the U.S. Constitution a blueprint for good government. And they knew that if it was ratified, the United States would be tremendously different and tremendously successful. But do go on. It has been frequently remarked that it seems to have been reserved to the people of this country by their conduct and example to decide the important question, whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. Did you get that? If we pay attention and educate ourselves, what they call conduct and example, and if we make our politicians and media prove what they say, what in the olden days they called reflection and choice, we can actually vote ourselves a good government, like they did in 1789. We don't have to wait for someone to save us. Do you have any idea how different that was and still is from any other country? If there be any truth in the remark, the crisis at which we are arrived may with propriety be regarded as the era in which that decision is to be made, and a wrong election of the part we shall act may, in this view, deserve to be considered as the general misfortune of mankind. This idea will add the inducements of philanthropy to those of patriotism to heighten the solicitude which all considerate and good men must feel for the event. The crisis to which Publius is referring is the chronic economic chaos of the time. And by that I mean the United States started as 13 colonies, and we got to 13 states as a result of the Revolutionary War. But what happened is we became more like 13 countries. Separate currencies, separate tariffs, separate all kinds of stuff. Some states paid their debts, some didn't. Some states contributed to the central treasury, some didn't. On top of that, the British would not sit down and negotiate a commercial treaty with us because they knew we were crazy. And Great Britain was the biggest market of the time.
Oh, and the British were also stationing troops in the Northwest Territory, not officially part of the United States, but the peace treaty we had signed with them said that they were going to get out of the Northwest Territories, and they didn't. Oh, and then the Spanish had shut down the port of New Orleans, so we couldn't get our stuff to market anyway, even if we had one. And then there was Shays' Rebellion but go look that up.
Now, is it as bad as things are today? Well, I don't know. We do have chronically high unemployment. We have chronically low economic growth. We have wage stagnation. Poverty's increased. We have unbelievable public debt of $16 trillion. And then there's Benghazi. But go look that up.
What I find interesting about the Federalist is that it's saying it's never too late to fix things if you've got this blueprint for good government, the United States Constitution. I also find it really interesting that they make this distinction between patriotism, love of country, and philanthropy, love of humanity. And they're saying vote for the Constitution because it's going to be good for the United States and it's going to be good for the world. It's like an 18th century version of the coexist sticker that you see on the bumpers of hippie cars.
So they're saying that vote for the Constitution even if you don't like the United States of America. And you guys know who you are, and actually so do we. Because the Constitution is going to help the United States. And if the United States is good and strong, then we'll help the rest of the world. Sound crazy? Sound like big old bad U.S. exceptionalism?
Well, put your little history caps on, because today, families in the United States, and actually you could say families throughout the world, even the poorest of them, live better today than kings did in the 18th century. King George of England did not have antibiotics, did not have an iPhone, things we take for granted today. King Louis of France did not have running water. He did not have a flush toilet. He had to poop in a pot. Now, interestingly, this process of enormous human progress got its start right around 1789 when the United States Constitution was ratified. And it has been going on and continuing the entire time the United States has been an economic and military and political leader in the world.
Happy will it be if our choice should be directed by a judicious estimate of our true interests, unperplexed and unbiased by considerations not connected with the public good. But this is a thing more ardently to be wished than seriously to be expected. The plan offered to our deliberations affects too many particular interests, innovates upon too many local institutions not to involve in its discussion a variety of objects foreign to its merits, and of views, passions, and prejudices little favorable to the discovery of truth. Wouldn't it be nice if people voted for a candidate because it was in the country's best interest, instead of their own self-interest? Yeah, not going to happen. People vote their self-interest because policies affect them differently. And this country was founded on a number of ideals, but one of the ideals was that you did have a God-given right to defend yourself, to act in your own best interest, to do what made you happy. One of the other ideals it was based on was that you had the God-given right to express that. What Publius is saying is that just don't expect all that expression to be truthful. Sequester drama was a good example of that. You'd have some guy saying, oh my God, this critical program's budget is getting 4% cut, and then somebody else would say, well, wait a minute, that critical program's budget was actually increased by 10% the previous year. And today, people vote based on not if some politician says he's going to increase your taxes or decrease your taxes or anything like that. People vote for a candidate because that candidate makes them feel good about themselves, or possibly voting for that candidate will make you look good in front of others, or because the voter wants to be a part of history. The Federalist is saying that, self-interest may sound base or mean, but it's kind of the fabric of the country. Among the most formidable of the obstacles which the new Constitution will have to encounter may readily be distinguished the obvious interest of a certain class of men in every state to resist all changes which may hazard a diminution of the power, emolument, and consequence of the offices they hold, under the state establishments, and the perverted ambition of another class of men who will either hope to aggrandize themselves by the confusions of their country, or will flatter themselves with fairer prospects of elevation from the subdivision of the empire into several partial confederacies than from its union under one government.
Publius is talking about the types of people who resisted the ratification of the U.S. Constitution even without reading word one of it. I think this is relevant today just as much as it was at the time it was written, because especially when we start talking about big ideas or big changes like entitlement reform or tax reform or even the tiniest rollback of a government program. First and foremost, you have people who resist change because they benefit from the status quo. Doesn't matter if the rest of us don't. They like the status quo, they do well, and they don't want to lose that. The next collection of people is those guys who they like chaos because they can take advantage of people's fears to get what they want. It doesn't matter if what they want is good or bad for everybody else, it's good for them. This is your now classic Rahm Emanuel style thinking, never let a serious crisis go to waste. And finally, you have people who are, they're big shots in their little town or their little village, and they like that. And they don't particularly want a lot of competition from the strong central federal government. They are big fish in a little pond, and they like that. People's fears to get what they want. It doesn't matter if what they want is good or bad for everybody else, it's good for them. This is your now classic Rahm Emanuel style thinking, never let a serious crisis go to waste. And finally, you have people who are, they're big shots in their little town or their little village, and they like that. And they don't particularly want a lot of competition from the strong central federal government. They are big fish in a little pond, and they like that.
It is not, however, my design to dwell upon observations of this nature. I am well aware that it will be disingenuous to resolve indiscriminately the opposition of any set of men, merely because their situations might subject them to suspicion, into interested or ambitious views. Candor will oblige us to admit that even such men may be actuated by upright intentions, and it cannot be doubted that much of the opposition which has made its appearance, or may hereafter make its appearance, will spring from sources, blameless at least, if not respectable, the honest errors of minds led astray by preconceived jealousies and fears. So numerous indeed and so powerful are the causes which serve to give a false bias to the judgment that we, upon many occasions, see wise and good men on the wrong as well as on the right side of questions of the first magnitude to society.
Is everybody who disagrees with a particular policy evil or dumb or mean or low information? No. Take Social Security reform. People who are dependent on that government program fear, wrongly I believe, that Social Security reform will reduce their income. They maintain, rightly, that they were promised, in return for regular contributions from their paycheck, a paycheck or a pension. The problem with that is that Social Security is not really a pension. It's a transfer program. It doesn't invest money. It doesn't create wealth. There's a huge difference in economic development between taking $2,500 and giving it to somebody who is going to pay their rent and their food and their prescriptions, and taking that same $2,500 and giving it to, let's say a factory owner who will go out, ideally, and buy some advanced piece of equipment that will increase his productivity, lower his costs, and he'll sell widgets like hotcakes. All Publius is saying is that take it easy. Don't demonize people who disagree with you on a policy that is very important to them.
This circumstance, if duly attended to, would furnish a lesson of moderation to those who are ever so thoroughly persuaded of their being in the right in any controversy. And a further reason for caution in this respect might be drawn from the reflection that we are not always sure that those who advocate the truth are influenced by purer principles than their antagonists. Ambition, avarice, personal animosity, party opposition, and many other motives not more laudable than these are apt to operate as well upon those who support as those who oppose the right side of a question. Were there not even these inducements to moderation, nothing could be more ill-judged than that intolerant spirit which has at all times characterized political parties. For in politics, as in religion, it is equally absurd to aim at making proselytes by fire and sword. Heresies in either can rarely be cured by persecution.
Sometimes the guy on your side is no more purer of heart than the guy on the other side. You know, the one you think is a bigoted idiot. Truth is a funny thing. Anybody can speak it, sinner or saint. And when you add political parties to the mix, things get ratcheted up even more. Publius is saying, again, a little moderation. Take it easy. Besides, you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar, meaning that shaming someone or bullying or intimidation or accusing them of bigotry will work in the short term, but in the long term, what's best for everybody is actually changing somebody's mind.
And yet, however just these sentiments will be allowed to be, we have already sufficient indications that it will happen in this as in all former cases of great national discussion. A torrent of angry and malignant passions will be let loose. To judge from the conduct of the opposite parties, we shall be led to conclude that they will mutually hope to evince the justness of their opinions and to increase the number of their converts by the loudness of their declamations and the bitterness of their invectives.
All that stuff Publius is talking about moderation, yeah, forget about it when it comes to the other side. When there are issues of national debate, people are going to go crazy with the name calling and the attacks. Take the current debate on gay unions as equivalent to traditional marriage. If you oppose that, then you're a homophobe and you're a bigot and a hater. If you support it, then you hate society and you hate humanity. When a lot is at stake, people are just going to lose their minds. Note to self, this is a good reason for small government, because with big government comes big politics, and big politics divides.
An enlightened zeal for the energy and efficiency of government will be stigmatized as the offspring of a temper fond of despotic power and hostile to the principles of liberty. An over-scrupulous jealousy of danger to the right to the people, which is more commonly the fault of the head than of the heart, will be represented as mere pretense and artifice, the stale bait for popularity at the expense of the public good. It will be forgotten, on the one hand, that jealousy is the usual concomitant of love, and that the noble enthusiasm of liberty is too apt to be infected with a spirit of narrow and illiberal distrust. On the other hand, it will be equally forgotten that the vigor of government is essential to the security of liberty, that in the contemplation of a sound and well-informed judgment, their interests can never be separated, and that a dangerous ambition more often lurks behind the specious mask of zeal for the rights of the people than under the forbidden appearance of zeal for the firmness and efficiency of government. History will teach us that the former has been found a much more certain road to the introduction of despotism than the latter, and that of those men who have overturned the liberties of republics, the greatest number have begun their career by paying an obsequious court to the people, commencing demagogues and ending tyrants. Both sides of an issue will demagogue. And demagogue, if you're not familiar with this term, you should be. It's a great term. Find out what it means and use it. It's from the Greek, so it's approved, And it just refers to when a speaker or a politician is talking to a bunch of people and he's trying to rile them up. He's trying to appeal to negative emotions like jealousy or hatred or bigotry. That guy has a nicer car than I do, or that person has a bigger house than I do. Rawr. You're just trying to rile people up. It's not an appeal to the individual because the individual thinks. It's an appeal to the mob because the mob acts. Just ask the French Revolution about that.
When the new U.S. Constitution was being introduced, there was a lot of demagoguery. And on one side, you had the people who supported the new Constitution. But they were accused of going tyrant on us. They were accused of wanting too strong a central government, and that was going to be tyranny, and it was just another king, and hey, we just spent 7 years fighting a king, what are you guys doing? On the other hand, though, the people who supported strong individual rights, they were accused of pandering to the mob, of not really wanting to protect anything, just wanting all these guys to vote for you. Publius makes a really important point here because he says that, okay, both sides right, both sides wrong, but historically speaking, the guys who have gone tyrant on us are the ones who have supported individual rights, the ones who have been all about supporting the little guy or Joe Sixpack or the 99%. It's not the guys who have openly supported a strong central government. You think?
In the course of the preceding observations, I have had an eye, my fellow citizens, to putting you upon your guard against all attempts, from whatever quarter, to influence your decision in a matter of the utmost moment to your welfare, by any impressions other than those which may result from the evidence of truth. You will, no doubt, at the same time, have collected from the general scope of them that they proceed from a source not unfriendly to the new Constitution. Yes, my countrymen, I own to you that, after having given it an attentive consideration, I am clearly of opinion it is your interest to adopt it. I am convinced that this is the safest course for your liberty, your dignity, and your happiness. I affect not reserves which I do not feel. I will not amuse you with an appearance of deliberation when I have decided. I frankly acknowledge to you my convictions, and I will freely lay before you the reasons on which they are founded. The consciousness of good intentions disdains ambiguity. I shall not, however, multiply professions on this head. My motives must remain in the depository of my own breast. My arguments will be open to all and may be judged of by all. They shall at least be offered in a spirit which will not disgrace the cause of truth.
I love this part. Publius, the writer, is just being upfront. He's just telling you that he's not objective. He tells you where he stands. I wish everybody were like that. The media, journalists, politicians. I mean, look, I'll tell you right up front that I'm with Publius on this one. I believe in a strong but limited government. I like the whole federalism thing. I like the whole separation of powers. I like the whole checks and balances. Over the past 100 years, our government has gotten quite a bit bigger. And that's good and that's bad. With a bigger government, you have a smaller citizen, and with more entitlement programs come less responsibility, less accountability. It might be time to swing that pendulum back just a smidge.
It may perhaps be thought superfluous to offer arguments to prove the utility of the Union, a point no doubt deeply engraved on the hearts of the great body of the people in every state, and one which it may be imagined has no adversaries. The fact is that we already hear it whispered in the private circles of those who oppose the new Constitution that the 13 states are of too great extent for any general system, and that we must of necessity resort to separate confederacies of distinct portions of the whole. This doctrine will, in all probability, be gradually propagated till it has votaries enough to countenance an open avowal of it. For nothing can be more evident to those who are able to take an enlarged view of the subject than the alternative of an adoption of the new Constitution or a dismemberment of the Union. It will therefore be of use to begin by examining the advantages of the Union, the certain evils, and the probable dangers to which every state will be exposed from its dissolution.
A couple things here. First, I find it interesting that people, even back then, back in 1788, were complaining that the United States was too big and too unwieldy to govern. That was when we were 13 states, not 50. People are saying the same thing today. Oh, how could anyone know that the IRS was targeting conservative groups? The other thing I find interesting is that Publius makes this comment about when there's a popular idea, some guys just don't have the guts to come out and oppose that popular idea. They sort of stay behind the scenes, they talk to friends, they talk amongst themselves until they get strength in numbers. Then they come out and oppose the popular idea. And Publius is just kind of, putting down a marker. Like, come on, guys, let's get the ideas out on the table. He's saying that either we ratify the Constitution and stay together, or we reject it and go our separate ways. We can't do another confederacy thing where we kind of have 13 separate countries. And with that, he starts the rest of the Federalist, which is explaining why staying together and why ratifying the Constitution is the best thing to do. So next up, Federalist number 2, concerning dangers from foreign influences. Thanks very much for watching.